Record. Okay. Hey guys, going over the second practice test now. So first thing I'm going to do is look at amo, amare, amawi, amatus, and I'm going to decide that it is first conjugation based on that ARE. And so the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to know, because it's first conjugation, that the future indicative for first conjugation is formed with that bi. Remember, I usually like to put the I in parentheses because really it goes bo bis bit, bimis bitis bunt. So you also see a bo represented and a bu represented in bunt. And also, if you do the passives, bor beris bitter. So you see a be represented. I think of the core as that bi, but that vowel changes all the time. So the future indicative, that's kind of the tense marker we'll be looking for. And then the next thing we'll know is the present subjunctive. Honestly, I think I learned it as he eats a giant or we eat caviar. I forget what I taught you guys. So he eats a giant. The E in he tells me that the present subjunctive vowel shift will be an E. So those are the things that are knowing the conjugation number is going to be really important for identifying. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all these and I'm going to determine what principal part they come from because that's going to help me identify the tense. So looking at the stems real quick, if I were to take amare and take off the re, I'd get ama, just ama. So if I see that, it's probably second principal part. If I were to take amawi and take off the I, I'd get amawa. So it's that V that really distinguishes it from the present stem. And if I take the fourth principal part, amatos, and you'll see in this test, I said amatos and acknowledging that it could be multiple genders, I get that amat. So if I see that amt, I probably have the perfect passive participle. Running through, and the fourth principal part. Running through this real quick, amamos is from second principal part. Amata eros is from fourth principal part. Amaweros is from third principal part. Amawisti is from third principal part. Amawises is from third principal part. Amare is from second. Amati erimus is from fourth. Amari is from second. Amabimer is from second. And amares is from second. So, amamos. I know that it is either the present imperfect or future. In the absence of ba or bi, that makes it the present indicative. In the absence of ba, bi, or really any other tense marker, right? Like the reason I know this is present indicative really comes down to it kept the A and it didn't get anything else. If that A in the amamos had been an E, we would have had subjunctive. So I guess if there's a tense marker, and it's almost the absence of a tense marker, that makes me say present indicative. But if there's a tense marker, it's that short A stayed the same. So present indicative, and then we can only tell if it's active or passive based on the ending. For present, imperfect, and future, it's all just about, does it use the present tense endings or does it use the active endings or the passive endings? And is it OST must sunt or aorist term erminianter? That's OST must sunt, makes it active. We know that that person is first and that number is plural. So first plural will translate we, present indicative will translate love. You can already see I made a typo. Plural, there we go. All right, amata eros. The real tense marker here is that eros. That's kind of the giveaway. And so what's happening here is we have that fourth principal part, the perfect passive participle. And I'm just going to copy down perfect from perfect passive participle plus the imperfect indicative of SA. Now, anytime you have a fourth principal part, you should be thinking passive. The only exception is if you have that that makes it a future active participle, but we clearly don't have that right? So we're thinking passive. Perfect plus imperfect. That's how you get your pluperfect. And then the eros is indicative, so we'll keep it indicative. The S tells me that it is second person and singular. So you, second person singular, had, pluperfect, been, passive, loved. You, second person singular, had, pluperfect, been, passive, loved. Amaweras, again, the tense marker is eros, or arguably just ERA. But what I wanted to point out here is that, well, first, third principal part, always, always, always active. Anytime you see the third principal part, it'll be active. If you see fourth, it's probably passive. If you see second, you got to look at the ending. Anytime you see third principal part, it's active. Eros is the tense marker for pluperfect, whether you're in the active or the passive. Just like ERI is the tense marker for future perfect, whether you're in the active or the passive, right? If it had been amata eris, that would have been future perfect. And if it had been amaweris, it would have been future perfect or perfect subjunctive. But forget that. But ERA is the pluperfect tense marker, whether you're in the active or passive. All I've changed is principal part between these two because they both end in S, meaning they're both second person singular. And that ERA, pluperfect indicative, both times. So instead of you had been loved, which was passive, this time it's just you had loved because it's active. Again, all I changed was going from the fourth principal part to the third principal part, and all that changed was passive to active. Amawisti, third principal part again, which always, 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 active. Amawisti. So the thing that's the tense marker here is that isti is from your perfect tense chart, your e istiet imus istus erant. So that tells me that it is perfect and indicative. Remember, indicative is kind of your default. Isti from e isti it is your second person singular. Don't confuse it with istis. Sometimes isti can be a tricky one just because it looks kind of like istis, which is simply you loved. It can be a few other things as well, actually. It can be you loved, you have loved, not had loved, right? Had loved is pluperfect. Or you did love. All of these are valid translations. This is why when you get non-homoisti, you might say you did not love, because you did love is a valid translation of homoisti. But oftentimes students just like to put you loved, and that's fine. I just need one of those. Homoises. What I'm noticing here is that ISSE, without an ending would have been perfect active infinitive, but with an ending, it's the pluperfect subjunctive. So, first off, active because it's third principal part, always active. And then with an ending, with an ending is pluperfect and subjunctive. The S makes it second person and singular. I want to see, do I have any pluperfect passive subjunctives on here? I do. All right. Something I want to point out, though, is the pluperfect passive subjunctive would look kind of like this, right? If you think about the pluperfect passive subjunctive, it would have been something like amat, let's say amatus ss. And you can see how ss kind of looks like ss. I don't know if that helps you at all. But I just think it's a neat comparison. Anyway, second person singular, S, isse plus ending, pluperfect subjunctive, third principal part, active. You can do, for the pluperfect subjunctive, you can do it as subjunctive. You might have, or you would have loved, right? Where the might and would express subjunctive and the have express some prior time. And really it expresses almost contrary to fact, which is something pluperfect subjunctive can do, right? You would have loved, but you didn't. I'm also fine. A lot of times you'll see pluperfect subjunctive. It will be in a cum clause or in an indirect question where we'll translate it indicatively. So you had loved. Amare, second principal part. just the second principal part, noticing that RE. What I'm seeing here with that RE, I'm going to call that the present active infinitive. That's your present active infinitive. This was the first kind of infinitive you learned. Just like present active indicative was the first kind of indicative you learned, the first kind of infinitive you learned was present active infinitive. So we will say to, that makes infinitive, love. That just keeps it present active. Contrast that with the MRE down here. Now remember, for passive infinitives, you just got to remember this chart. That it's RE is what RE becomes, ARE is what ARE becomes, E is what ERE becomes, and IRE is what IRE becomes. So in this case, first conjugation, we got that RE. So skipping down just a little bit, that ARI is what I'm looking at to realize that what I have here is the opposite, the present passive infinitive. Whoops. Sorry. Present passive infinitive. And the way I'll do that is to make it infinitive, be blanked. So be loved makes it passive, to be loved. Right? Amati erimus. All right. So the tense marker here really is that erimus. And just like when I was up here and I mentioned that it was the perfect passive participle plus this time it's plus the future indicative of sum. Erimus means literally we will be. So the perfect plus the future is how you get future perfect, right? Naturally enough. The voice is indicative because erimus is indicative. And the tense is passive because it's fourth principal part. You should expect it to be passive, with the only exception being that Mus as an ending tells me that it's first person plural. Sorry, I forgot to mention. Infinitives don't have person or number. That's why I didn't fill those out. So infinitives don't have person or number. Sorry, mus as an ending now. Back to that. First person plural. All right. First person plural, we will say we. Future will. Perfect have. Passive been. Loved. We will have been loved. Will have been loved. All right. BI. Remember up here. First thing I noticed when I said it was first conjugation is that BI will be my future tense marker. So the thing I notice right now is that BI in Bimmer. And so I tell you it is future indicative. Now we are looking at a second principal part, which means I don't know its voice, right? Third is usually active, fourth is usually passive, second could be either. So I have to look at the ending mer to discover that it's passive. Mer is also the first person plural in that passive chart. So we first person plural, will future be passive, loved. Amares. What I've got here is that ARE, that infinitive ending, that infinitive, and really that RE part of the infinitive especially, with an ending after it. If you take the present active infinitive and you add your endings directly onto it, what you end up with is the imperfect subjunctive. Okay. Now, again, second principal part, I can only know the voice by looking at the ending, and the ending is S. So actually, don't get this confused with amaris, where the ending would be ris, because that would have an I there. But yeah, the ending is just S. So the S tells me, because it's from OST must to sunt, and that's our active pattern of endings, tense tells me it's active. And this is your second person singular from that active series. Second person singular. So second person, you, second person singular, you. Imperfect subjunctive, I like to use might. Active, love. If it were passive, I would have said be. But yeah, it's active. You might love. You can also say you may love. Both those will work. All right. Peto, patera, petiwi, petitus. Oh. Yeah. I'm very inconsistent. I gave petitum. That's another valid form of the dictionary entry. This is using... Let's not get into it. The point is... Petera, the thing I'm noticing is that P-E-T-E, but notice it's a short E. So what I'll actually be expecting, because of how third conjugation works, is probably something like P-E-T-I. Because remember, third conjugation, before before endings, this short E becomes an I. So instead of what you'll end up with is something like peto, petis, petit. For the present. So for the present active. So look out for I for present active indicative. Petiwa, we'll be looking for that V. In petitum or petitus, we'll be looking for that T. So far, all the examples in these practices, the way you look for perfect stem is that V and perfect passive stem is that T. That's kind of a coincidence, but it is also a pretty common pattern. All right. So third conjugation, what do I know? The first thing is, like earlier, I said the present active is that I, which sometimes becomes an O or a U, because peto, petis, petit, petimus, petitus, petunt. It can, in fact, become an E in the, just like bor, bears, bitter, how that you get that beris, you get pateris. I'm not going to give you pateris because I don't want you worrying about pateris versus pateris. Because what I want you thinking is if, present, not present active, present indicative. What I want you thinking if you see the E is the future indicative, which is a long E, or it can also be technically, petam, petes, petet. But you see a long E, that's really what you're looking for future indicative. And then in he eats a giant, you get your present subjunctive. So, fun fact, petam, your present subjunctive is A. The he eats a. Fun fact, petam, because future is petam, petes, petet. And the present subjunctive is petam, petas, petat. Petam can be future indicative or present subjunctive. But let's not worry about that because either answer is valid. You're probably going to end up putting present subjunctive. I'm fine with that. I'm going to list both. I would like you to know it can be both, but there's a lot on this. So let's start with this. Petamus, the thing first, petamus, no V, no T, second principal part. No second T, rather, one T, I guess. Petimus, second principal part. Petitus, fourth principal part. Petebant, second principal part. Petiverit, the V tells me third principal part. Petitus esset, fourth principal part. All right. Petemus, with that long E. I know, therefore, it's future indicative. It really needs to be. It's not patera, like this isn't even one of the ones that has other options. This is really future indicative. Second principal part, meaning it's present, imperfect, or future, means that I have to look at the ending to determine its voice. I will determine its voice is active because mus is from MST, mustus, und. Sorry, OST, well, either one. O or M, ST, mustus, und. That's an active pattern. It's not arister. The long E is what I was looking at for future indicative. Now the number mus tells me it's first person and singular. Petimus, the thing I'm looking at, the only thing to look at is that I as its vowel. This tells me it's from peto, petis, petit, petimus, petitus, petunt. That tells me it is my present indicative. The idea is before the endings, that short E shortened further to an I. Present indicative. I feel really incomplete not including that it could be E, but like only E in the second person. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm okay. Because if you see the E, usually it's future indicative. Anyway, present indicative. The most again tells me it's active, and the most again tells me it's first person singular. All right. So both of these will be translated we. The future active indicative, number 11, will be we will for future. Seek. The present active indicative will just simply be we seek, or we are seeking, or we do seek. All of those are fine. Petitus est. What I'm looking at here, the tense marker is that est. So what I have is a present, is a perfect passive participle plus a present indicative est. So perfect plus present is perfect. Est is indicative, so this will be indicative. And then fourth principal part is usually passive. The only exception is that for future active participle. We don't have the so we're going to do passive. Perfect passive indicative. Est is your third person singular form. Sometimes for third person singular, we say he, she, or it, but actually we know this is the masculine because it's us. If it were she, it would be petita. Petitus is your masculine. He has been sought, or he was sought. Both of these are valid. Notice it's has with an S, not had with a D. Had would be pluperfect. Has with an S is fine for the perfect tense. He has been sought, or he was sought. BA is what I'm noticing in this next one. BA means that it is imperfect indicative. The next thing, because it's second principal part, which means it's present, imperfect, or future, I need to look at the ending nt to determine that it is active. If it had been unter, it would have been passive. And this is your third person plural. So we're going to say they. That's third person plural. Were blinking. So in this case, were seeking. That's your imperfect active. Petit wear it. I'm going to look at that ERI. And just like earlier, how that ERI meant future perfect. So here it's going to mean future perfect. This is your future perfect. Third principal part means it's always, always, always active. And this is your indicative. Except I lied, because that's not the only thing it can be. The ERI is also the tense marker for the perfect subjunctive. So we have two options here. It is third person and singular. So let's just use he, make it easy on ourselves. If it is perfect active indicative, instead of he has been sought, we just say he has sought or he sought. That's your perfect active indicative. Let's just go with he sought. He did seek would also work. If it is, oh no, it's, sorry. I messed up. It's future perfect indicative. If it's future perfect indicative, it is he will future have perfect sought. Active, so no Ben. He will have sought. If it is your perfect subjunctive, then you can get something closer to he might have sought, right? Might for subjunctive, have for perfect. You can also just do he sought. Perfect subjunctive will usually be in a cum clause or indirect question more times than not, but I like he might have sought. And I'm all right. Petitus esset. This is your third person singular, right, with the T ending. And then the thing I'm really looking at here to determine its tense is this esset. So earlier we had the perfect passive participle plus the present indicative with est. This time we have the perfect passive participle plus the imperfect subjunctive with esset. The idea of the imperfect subjunctive is it's that infinitive esse plus endings, right? When you take the infinitive, the present active infinitive, and you add endings, that's how you get the imperfect subjunctive, SMSS esset. So perfect plus imperfect is pluperfect. Fourth principal part, you should expect it to be passive because it's from the perfect passive participle. And then esset is subjunctive, so this will be subjunctive. Your pluperfect passive subjunctive. I am fine with you translating the pluperfect subjunctive indicatively and hearing that had. He had been for passive sought. However, if you want to translate it as subjunctively, you can also do it as he might have been or he would have been, right? He might, subjunctive, have shows a kind of pastness to it, been, or he would have been sought. I'm fine with any of those answers. He might have been sought, he would have been sought, he had been sought. Up to you. Because it'll be context how you use the pluperfect subjunctive. In might have been is probably the least common. Would have been for contrary to fact in like an independent clause. Doesn't matter. All of these are valid translations of the pluperfect subjunctive. You'll have to decide in context in a passage. So on this test, I'll accept any of them. All right. Thank you. That's the second one done. Have a good day.